Rhetoric is composed, indeed, from the analytic science, and from that political science which is conversant with morals ; and it is partly similar to dialectic, and partly to sophistical arguments. In proportion, however, as any one endeavours to discuss either dialectic or rhetoric, not as powers, but as sciences, so far he ignorantly destroys the nature of them, by migrating through this attempt into the sciences of certain subject things, instead of alone making a transition into the powers or faculties of words. At the same time, we shall now speak of whatever it is indeed requisite to distinguish, and which leaves matter of consideration to the political science. For nearly the subjects which are discussed by all those who give counsel are especially five in number ; and these are concerning wealth, war and peace, and besides these, the defence of the country, exports and imports, and legislation. Hence, it is requisite that he who is to give counsel about wealth should know the revenues of the country, what they are, and how, if they are deficient, an addition may be made to them, and how, if they are too small, they may be augmented. It is likewise necessary that he should be acquainted with all the expenses of the city, and how any unnecessary expense may be removed, and that which is greater than is fit may become less. For men not only become richer by accumulation of property, but also by a decrease of expense. And these things may not only be surveyed from the experience of private affairs, but in order to give counsel about these, it is necessary to be skilled in what has been discovered by others. With respect, however, to war and peace, it is necessary to know the power of the city, what the forces of it are at present, how great they may be, what the nature of the strength is which is possessed, and what addition may be made to it, and farther still, what wars the city has had, and how they have been conducted. And it is not only necessary that he who gives counsel should understand these concerns of his own country, but also those of the neighbouring countries. He should likewise be particularly acquainted with those cities against which it is thought fit to wage war, in order that peace may be made with the more powerful, and war undertaken against the less powerful, if requisite. He must also know the forces of these cities, whether they are similar or dissimilar ; for in these it is possible to be superior or inferior. It is likewise necessary for this purpose that he should not only have surveyed the wars of his own country, but likewise the event of the wars of other countries. For similars are naturally adapted to be known from similars. Farther still, with respect to the defences of the country, it is requisite not to be ignorant how it may be defended, but to know the multitude of its defenders, and the form of the defence, and the places proper for garrisons. This knowledge, however, cannot be possessed by him who is unacquainted with the country. For such knowledge is necessary, in order that if the defence is less than it ought to be, it may be increased ; that if superfluous, it may be taken away ; and that garrisons may be formed in more appropriate places. Again, it is requisite to know what expense is necessary to supply the city with provisions, what the country will afford, and what must be supplied from abroad, what commodities are fit to be imported, and what exported, in order that conventions and compacts may be considered accordingly. For there are two descriptions of men with whom it is necessary the citizens should preserve themselves blameless, viz. with those that are more powerful, and with those that are beneficial to them in a commercial point of view. And it is necessary, indeed, to be able to survey all these particulars for the sake of security, and in no small degree for the purpose of understanding the business of legislation. For the safety of the city is in the laws. Hence it is necessary to know how many forms of government there are, what kind of things are advantageous to each, and by what they are naturally adapted to be corrupted, both among things appropriate and contrary to the polity. But I say, governments are corrupted by things appropriate, because all other polities, except that which is the best, are corrupted by remission and intention. Thus, for instance, a democracy not only becomes more imbecile by remission, so as at length to arrive at an oligarchy, but it is also weakened by vehement intention, just as an aquiline and a flat nose not only arrive at mediocrity by remission, but likewise, when they become very aquiline or flat, cause the nose to be so disposed that it no longer appears to be a nostril. It is moreover useful for the purpose of legislation, not only to understand what is advantageous to a polity, by a survey of past events, but also to know the condition of other polities, and what is adapted to each. Hence it is evident that travelling is useful for the purposes of legislation, since from hence the laws of nations may be obtained. But the knowledge of history is requisite to political councils. All these particulars, however, are the business of politics, and not of rhetoric. Such, therefore, are the principal things which he who intends to give counsel ought to possess. CHAPTER 5. Let us again, however, enumerate the particulars from which it is requisite to exhort or dissuade, both respecting these things and other things, but nearly both privately to each individual, and in common to all men. There is a certain scope to which choice and diversions are directed, and this is in short felicity, and the parts of it. Hence, for the sake of an example, we shall assume what felicity is, and from what the parts of it consist. For all exhortations and all dissuasions are conversant with this, and with the things which contribute to it, and the contraries to this. For it is necessary to perform such things as procure this felicity, or a certain part of it, or which render it greater instead of less, and not to do those things which corrupt, or impede felicity, or produce its contraries. Let felicity therefore be defined to be acting well in conjunction with virtue, or a life sufficient to itself, or the most pleasant life in conjunction with security, or a prosperous condition of possessions and the body, together with a power of preserving and affecting these. For nearly all men acknowledge that felicity is one or more than one of these. If, therefore, felicity is a thing of this kind, it is necessary that the parts of it should be nobility of birth, and abundance of friends, and these such as are worthy men, riches, a numerous progeny, and a good old age, and besides these, the virtues of the body, such as health, beauty, strength, magnitude, agonistic power, glory, honour, and prosperity, virtue, or also the parts of it, prudence, fortitude, justice, and temperance. For thus a man will be most sufficient to himself, if both internal and external goods are present with him. For there are no other goods besides these. But internal goods, indeed, are both those which pertain to the soul, and those which pertain to the body. And external goods are nobility of birth, friends, riches, and honour. And besides these, we think it requisite that power and fortune should be present, for thus life will be most secure. In a similar manner, therefore, we shall assume what each of these is. Nobility of birth, then, both to a nation and a city, is when the people are indigenous or ancient, and their first leaders or commanders are illustrious men, and when many persons illustrious in those things which are the objects of emulation are the progeny of these. But private nobility is derived either from men or from women, and a legitimate procreation from both. And in this nobility, as well as in that of a city, it is requisite that the first authors of the race should be illustrious either in virtue or in riches, or in something else which is honourable, and likewise that many illustrious men and women, young and old, should be the progeny of this genus. With respect to a good and numerous offspring, it is not immanifest what it is. But in a community, a good offspring is a multitude of young and worthy children, who are worthy indeed according to the virtue of the body, as for instance in magnitude, beauty, strength, and agonistic power, and according to the virtue of the soul, in temperance and fortitude, which are the virtues of youth. Privately, however, the offspring is good and numerous, if the proper children, both male and female, are many and worthy. But the corporeal virtue of females is beauty and magnitude, and the virtues of their soul are temperance and sedulity without illiberality. It is requisite, therefore, to investigate both privately and publicly the existence of each of these virtues, in men and in women. For where these virtues are wanting in the women,